because we are now trying to go to live, to Zoom. Let's see who is there. Even surprise for us. Oh, okay. At least we see Barbara and we see Rimvydas. So, do our viewers also see them? Not that. Well, they will see you when you start speaking. I think that's how it works. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Rimvydas, for joining us. And we have also Tuulikki here with us. So really in a hybrid way. Greetings to Vilnius and Bremen. Really nice to have you over today. The first question, we didn't really want to focus today only about the crisis and pandemics and all of that. But the question is, do you think that there are underlying opportunities for libraries during or because of the crisis we are going through now? Barbara, what do you think?
I think there are underlying opportunities because, at least in Germany, people are asking for the libraries. When the library was closed in March, many of the German libraries were closed since March until May. People were asking the politicians, why do you close the library? Even in the newspapers, there was the question, what is the use of closing the libraries? They could have open, they have big spaces, they have large spaces. Why are they closed? So that is good that we are needed and that people express this need. And I think this is a general opinion now in Germany that people want the libraries open. They want the service of the libraries, but unfortunately, the openness of the libraries is restricted. We do not have that many people. People were so happy when they came into the library on the 4th of May after a closure of 8 weeks. And they expressed that also to the newspapers. So I think that the image of the libraries improved very much on the one hand side, but I maybe later say what changed to the a bit worse side.
Mm-hmm. But now you mentioned the user, the citizen's view, that they missed. Yes. And that's very good to know because, you know, that would be really, really sad if being closed, we realize that nobody misses us. I think this is a very deep emotion, that's something we are afraid of. But what about the politicians' point of view, or let's say policy makers, decision makers? Do they understand the critical role that libraries play in helping on a welfare, mental well-being during the crisis, also sharing information for its citizens during crisis, or they think that that comes in a very bottom of the list of priority areas?
I have to say that the politicians do not automatically realize anything or notice anything, because we, us, the librarians, we have to tell them and the public and to have the public as the testimonials. That's the thing, because the first time when we had the first day we were closed, the Lord Mayor and Prime Minister of Bremen called me and say, Barbara, someone called me, how can people get books again when you are closed? So, and we have to do the advocacy. It is not automatically. So as always, the politicians do not notice us if we don't stand up and say something and engage us. And that is the thing. It's not an automatism. It's us who have to do the promotion of the libraries and to insist on our role and have the public as testimonials of our role. And this is a three-part game, maybe.
Rimvydas, you probably saw the question that we posed after your intervention, a bit of provocative question of because you talked about digitalization. What do you think that this rapid digitalization, especially now what we've seen in the recent half a year, digitalization of different services, do you think that this will help libraries to be more relevant, or it will make the work harder for libraries?
Good morning. I have answered optimistically to your question. Because I think that all challenges, they open a new possibilities and we could engage us to make important decisions in this field. And actually, if you talk about digitalities in libraries, in museums, in schools, in universities, and around us, that actually this crisis is important, I think, for some things. And first one is that we have a possibility to test our digital situation in real, I don't know, it's not war, but in crisis conditions. Because when we live before, it looks, in a lot of situations, our digital situation or using of digital technologies in libraries, in schools, in museums, they looks very well and they looks fine. But actually, when we was needed to start our online services, that it looks that we have a lot of problems. For example, our systems, they are arranged mostly for scholars, but not for general public. Or for example, we have a lot of limitations like personal information, like intellectual property, and etc. And we cannot to perform a lot of services online because it's limited by a lot of legal regulations. Or for example, when we start our work online, actually we find that a lot of people who works in our institutions, they are prepared to work for technical work. They have some good skills in digital technologies, but actually when they start to take on some digital services, we find a lot of, a big lack of competences on services level, because for example, in time of crisis, a lot of Lithuanian museums, they start creating content for YouTube. But actually, yes, technically it was very well created content. But actually, if you take an excursion in your museum, 1 hour or 1.5 hours, and take this movie into YouTube, in space where format is from 3 to 10 minutes, that actually we understand that our skills, or our understanding about how digital technologies works, they are not completed, but actually it's a big push to us, or big push to our system to change and to understand the real needs of our users, real problems with our competences, real problems with our technologies and similar things. That I am optimistic, because I find that how fastly people are educated, how fastly they learn new competences, and how this sector grows in this time. It could look, I don't know, crazy, but I think that after this crisis, public sector, schools, libraries, museums, they will much more stronger in digital technologies than before.
Very good point. Can I come back to you, Barbara? You made a very clear point that it shouldn't be taken kind of automatically that policymakers know about our value. That's true. And also there are a lot of stereotypes. Our viewer today, or our listener, is commenting here in the system that, for example, in Latvia, we've heard some persons saying, why to close libraries? No one goes there anyway. So, and probably it's not only in Latvia. So on one hand, it's always easy to complain or easy to accuse the policymakers that they don't understand us. But what can we do as libraries to actually give that argumentation needed? We all know how difficult it is to actually assess the impact of culture and impact in the language that the policymakers understand. So what do you think, and what can IFLA do to actually help library sector to have those arguments to speak to policymakers?
Well, there are several things. The first thing is that politicians want numbers on the one hand side. They want the impact shown by numbers and figures and the performance of the libraries. But if you only say we lend out such and such many books, that is not the impact, This is something which is maybe important to a politician who only looks at the figures. So combining figures and numbers with storytelling. So what does happen in the library? How are people behaving in the library? What is the outcome of the library for certain individuals or for groups of people? So storytelling, telling the politicians funny stories, telling the politicians about the social impact of libraries. When I told a person, once a person told me, do you know that your library is the reason why I get up in the morning, why I take a shower, shave, and can leave my home? Do you know that this is the reason, the library is the reason for that? And I'm telling stories like this to the politicians, not saying just the figures, but telling showing individuals who gain from the library something. This is something one. IFLA is trying to support this. There is when you go to the IFLA website, you find a lot of information about how to engage with advocacy. 5 minutes, look at this. There's, I think, about now 30 different examples how you can promote your library in a way that but you have to stand up. I always say the library is you and I am the library, not somebody else, not the library as an institution, as a building. I am the library and I have to represent the library. I have to wear the mantle of my function as a librarian everywhere. So this is one thing. The other thing is that perhaps many of you know that the UNESCO brought out these Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals. That means the UNESCO wants the world to develop. There are 17 fields of development. Education is one field, promotion of the emancipation of women, good cities is another field, and libraries can find their contribution to this agenda. And IFLA has made up a program to find that the libraries can find out which is the field where my library especially is very much engaged. We are all engaged in education. We never connected that to higher political levels. So we have to look, what is the political interest in my country or in my city, maybe even worldwide, like with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and then the contribution to that demand, the contribution of the library to that challenge. So, for instance, have a look at the library map of the world at the IFLA website, library map of the world, and there are the SDG stories, the stories of the Sustainable Development Goals, and libraries bring in examples how they react, how they contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, as an example. So we need not always do something new, projects which are extraordinary. Just tell the people what we are doing and tell them what is the impact of this. So have a look at the IFLA website. You find different kinds of support and interest things, sometimes really funny things, how you can approach the politicians or the society or the public or the media with telling stories about the impact of the libraries.
Barbara, you mentioned, or you said very powerfully, that the libraries, it's us, the librarians. And that's something we've seen, that even if the policymakers have understood or are on the process of understanding the impact or importance of libraries, then they think of the services. They think of the buildings, the space, the digital equipment. They think of whether you're open or not open, or flexible or not flexible. But what is not maybe as much discussed is the librarians themselves. Another person asks here, or comments actually, saying that they totally agree with you, Barbara, and instead of asking questions about tech developments, ask questions about the mental well-being of the librarians, especially in the crisis. You can always buy a new computer or a scanner, but you cannot replace people. The people should be priority. So just as a follow-up question to you, how can we make sure that when we are building up that kind of a vital role of libraries during the crisis, we do not leave people behind?
You mean the staff,
The staff.
leave the staff
yes,
behind.
the librarians.
Yes, of course. But I am sure that every librarian is so much engaged and wants to serve the public. And of course, people like me, the managers in the libraries, have to look that this is a safe place. So, in my library, for instance, we are following the rules of the Occupational Medical Center for Bremen. So we ask them, how can we safeguard our staff with this? So we have these plastic barriers, people can wear mouth masks and all this. So I think the most important thing is, of course, to care for the safeguard, but to give the librarians also the opportunity to do their work, because they want to do their work. That is important. And to show also then the politicians again, look, the librarians are not those bureaucrats just sitting in their offices and waiting that the pandemic is gone, not doing nothing, because that's unfortunately the picture of many officials in Germany. People are sitting there, not in the offices, but at home. So, and the librarians are not sitting at home. They are waiting to meet the customers in a way that they are safe. And the managers have to take care for this. And I'm not sure about the Baltic states, but in Germany, there is special money coming from administration for the pandemic needs. And so you have to go to your politicians and say, I need money for the mouth masks. I need money for the sanitizers. I need extra money for this and this and this. And I need money maybe to expand my ebook collection, because the users who cannot come to the library, they are really rubbing up the ebook collection, so they are lending out ebooks as much. So it's a mixture, and it's the responsibility of the managers first to make a balance between the services and the safeguarding and the well-being of the staff. But the staff is not against the public, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. Rimvydas, since you brought this digital sharing economy point of view to our discussion, let me ask you just a bit about the skill set necessary for actually doing what you were saying. We know from the crisis that there were some libraries, like, for example, the Tallinn Central Library, just 4 days after the lockdowns, 4 days out of the lockdowns, they came out with 5 new digital services. Okay? So it took 4 days or 5 days to actually come up with a completely new set of services. And then we know some other libraries that even now, half a year later, are still looking for their position and what they should do in this situation. So what do you think are the preconditions inside libraries to actually facilitate the kind of a change that you were talking about?
I think that it depends from particular libraries, particular managers, particular countries, and actually we have in very different situations in different countries, different libraries. But what is important the understanding that we are going online, and actually understanding how it works online and how it could be perceived or understood by our users and by our audiences. And for this, I think that one of most important skills, or what is most important things, are communicative skills. Because one of big changes when we start and work distantly, or when we start to work online, it was changes in communication. Because one part of our communication, or by one way we are communicated when we work in face-to-face mode, and another when we work online. And third actually is when we work online without direct contact with our audiences, when we work online asynchronous, when we put some videos or put with some material in informational systems, that actually, I think, by my opinion, yes, I am interested in this because I work for Faculty of Communication. But I think that one of most important skills in this situation is to develop communicative skills and to enable people work in different environments.
And another follow-up to you, and then we will finalize, and maybe Barbara can wrap up from her side. When you were talking, it was very inspirational, Rimvydas. You talked about curatorial world and participatory world, and that reminded me very well my good friend, Professor Laužikas' approach to culture 1.0, 2.0, moving to 3.0, from this very from kind of a hierarchical model of patronage to more participatory models. When Estonia in 2017 organized its EU presidency conference, it actually focused on the role of heritage. We called it a Heritage 3.0. And for that reason, Laužikas actually further developed that point, looking at how heritage is moving from so-called being temples of knowledge, knowing best, being in control, being the temple of truth, and moving through kind of being entertainment machines, culture creative industries, to actually this kind of a content communities, meaning participatory platforms. So that reminded me very well what you were saying. My question to you, and then finally to Barbara, is on one hand, this means a mindset. This is kind of an expectations, what people, what communities, what the citizens are expecting from the libraries. But what do you think that the librarians themselves are ready for that kind of a paradigm change? Or it's already provocative questions because they have already been ready for a long time?
Yeah, I think that when we start similar works, we need to think about some kind of strategies, how to create communities of engagement or communities of knowledge, how to create these networks and how could work these networks. That actually at this time, for example, in museum sectors, because for me it's a little bit easier to talk about museums, but I think that similar strategies could be used for works in libraries. We could talk about not less than 3 strategies. One strategy is metaphorically could be named a strategy of Jesus. When you translate, when you broadcast a lot of material, when you put a maximum material by different channels, different medias, and much more as and you want to put online, not online, more as possible. But actually, when you not care what is happened after, it's like Jesus Christ who tell a lot for people, but actually, yeah. And second strategies could be metaphorically named as strategy of Socrates. When you take a not big group of people, but you work with this group and you finish your work only after when you know that your results are achieved, that I know this group is created, he is active, and etc., etc. And third strategy could be named as Facebook strategy or social network strategy. When you put a lot of tools to your users, they create his profiles, some kind of something, and share by information by yourselves. It is not your active role in putting of information, but it's active your role in creating tools and in moderating of process. Mm-hmm. In one strategy, you broadcast a lot of informations. In another strategy, you work actively with group of people, and in strategy, you create tools and people work together.
And I think this is very much in line with what Barbara said before about impact, that policymakers often want numbers, quick, in a strategic language, they want to see output, but they don't have time and patience to actually look for impact, real impact. Barbara, for you to wrap up this discussion.
Yes, we are talking about digitization, and that is okay, and this is helpful now. And I think I'm totally with Rimvydas that the outcome will be a better positioning of the libraries in the whole field of digitization. But I must say, for some time already, libraries are propagating themselves as third spaces, the third space function of the library. So this is the space between the home and the working space or the school. The library has a space in the life of the people. These spaces in pandemic times are endangered, even not existing sometimes. And many people now say a library is information and space. And the information, of course, in digital form, that's necessary, that's okay, that's the future as well. But the future should be also the space, the public space, the meeting space, the learning space, whatever space we might call. But the third space function is now endangered in the pandemic. And I think as librarians, we have to look not to lose that issue as being a third space, and to regain our function as a third place in any way we can do it during the pandemic, and of course enhance it after the pandemic. And third space also means, as you said, this people, our staff are part of the third space. Without the people, the third space wouldn't really function, wouldn't really work. So people, our staff, and the library as a space, as a building, combined with the digital services. And this is really a challenge, and I think we all like to take the challenge.
Super. Thank you.
I think that it's combined with digital services, because if you have to finalize or to talk optimistically, when I look to my kids when they play on computer games, I know that physically they are at home, but really we're in the third place.
Very good. Thank you both. This has been really exciting. Everybody in the audience, so to show that we have people here, fantastic.